Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. GDP data springs a pleasant surprise. Growth in Q4 accelerates to 7.4%, the highest in a year. Growth in FY25 is at 6.5%, which is the slowest in 3 years, but in line with government's estimates. US President Donald Trump accuses China to totally violating the preliminary trade agreement. This comes a day after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that trade talks between both nations have stalled. A federal appeals court temporarily pauses a lower court's order to halt Trump's tariff juggernaut, gives the US government some breathing room as it explores legal options on seeking a relief from the country's highest court. Relief for L&T, the Mumbai Metropolitan Authority scraps 2 road project tenders worth 14,000 crore rupees after Supreme Court raised concerns over L&T's disqualification. State government to now decide on future course of action. Multinational companies under the GST scanner, sources say global capability centers and Indian subsidiaries of MNCs face inquiries on export of services, client contracts and invoicing structures. That's an exclusive. Government wants the RBI to spare small borrowers from stricter gold loan rules, proposes an exemption for loans below 2 lakh rupees, also wants the new rules to be deferred till January of next year. Yoga Guru Ramdev's Patanjali Ayurved faces government scrutiny for possible government lapses. Sources say Ministry of Corporate Affairs has issued notices seeking details of financial transactions. CBI arrests a deputy director at the Enforcement Directorate, Chintan Raghuvanshi, for allegedly soliciting a bribe. The CBI laid a trap after being approached by a businessman in Odisha who was summoned by the ED officials and was allegedly asked to pay a bribe of 5 crore rupees. Budget airline model is not dead in India, says Indigo CEO Peter Elbers, while adding that low cost does not mean low proposition. Also says that Indigo is following the law on flights to Turkey and wet leasing planes from Turkish Airlines. Promises changes to the network if government takes any decision. Israel intensifies its attack on Gaza even as Hamas reviews a ceasefire deal drafted by the United States. Tel Aviv has already signed off on the proposal, which includes a 60-day ceasefire, humanitarian aid to Gaza via the United Nations, and the release of 28 Israeli hostages alive and dead. Well, we'll come to all of that and a lot more in just a bit. But first, to the day's market action. The sensex and the nifty closed with minor cuts after a volatile session, with nifty ending below the 24,800 mark. The nifty bank outperformed while mid-caps closed 37 points in the red. For the week, sensex and the nifty were down for the second straight week, falling less than 1%. But mid-caps and banks bucked the trend, ending in the green. And well, Wall Street futures wobbled after US President Donald Trump accused China of violating an agreement with the US to ease tariffs. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said that his temporary deal with China saved Beijing from civil unrest. This comes a day after US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that trade talks between the US and China are currently stalled. US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has echoed Trump's allegations. In an interview with CNBC, Greer said that the America is concerned by China's non-compliance with temporary deal.
And we've been very focused on monitoring Chinese compliance, or in this case, non-compliance, with the agreement. And we're very concerned with it. We moved, as the president just said, very quickly. No one can deny that. The United States did exactly what it was supposed to do. And the Chinese are slow rolling their compliance, which is completely unacceptable and has to be addressed. But ultimately, the nature of the things we're talking about, it does require some leader-to-leader understandings, right? We made a huge effort in Geneva to accommodate the Chinese. And listen, it always ends up being this way, whether it's the United States or other Western countries have always sought to accommodate the Chinese. We've had open markets, et cetera. And time again, we see the Chinese come down and not comply with their agreements, slow roll compliance, not open their economy like they should.
Right. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs will remain in effect, at least as of right now. A federal appeals court in Washington reinstated them a day after the U.S. Court of International Trade in Manhattan had blocked most of these so-called reciprocal tariffs. The appeals court ordered a temporary stay on the lower court's decision while it considers the Trump administration's motion papers. Well, back home, India's GDP growth in Q4 has raced ahead of estimates. Growth of 7.4% was well above the CNBC TV18 poll, which had forecast of 6.8%. With this growth for the full year, it touched 6.5%, which was the government's target. Lata Venkatesh now joins us with the full report card. Lata.
Yes, the GDP growth number is very satisfying. We did a poll and we were told that the fourth quarter economic growth will be about 6.85%. It has come at 7.4%. Now, the GDP number also includes taxes, subsidies, etc. If you take all that out and only look at pure value added by the economy, you call it the GVA number. Now, that in the fourth quarter has grown at 6.8. Our poll said only 6.5. So whichever way you cut it, this is a very good rate of growth, much better than what economists were prepared for. What fired within the overall economy in the fourth quarter? Agriculture has done very well, both in the fourth quarter and in the full year. For the fourth quarter, agriculture has grown by 5%, which is always satisfying because it employs the largest number of people. So growth is obviously better dispersed when it comes from the agri sector. The next best sector is the services sector. Construction has grown by 10.8%. I mean, that's a superb growth. Clearly shows government capex is good. Real estate is probably investing a lot, that comes under construction. So that again is an employment-oriented sector, and that helps that is growing very fast. Among other services sectors, finance, that's grown about 7%, 7.8%, public administration, 8.7%. So all employment-heavy sectors have done well. That's satisfying. What's not fired is manufacturing. Grown only by 4.8% for all our effort of Make in India. That part is just not firing as much. There were some entrepreneurs, CEOs who come to our channel. On camera, they were very positive about their numbers, but off-cam, people tell you that between states, the competition is for unease of doing business, not ease for doing business. So they roundly believe that regulations are responsible. Be that as it may, the bottom line is that manufacturing is the only sore point in the composition of the GVA or the economy. You can also look at the GDP from the expenditure side. Did you spend it? Did you consume? Did you invest? If you look at it from that angle, then consumption is kind of slightly slower compared to investment. Capital formation has grown at 9.4% in the fourth quarter, which means a lot of money was invested, or the rate at which we were investing is continuing to charge higher. Consumption has grown at 6%. Now, you can crib a little bit about it. Rural consumption has done well. Most of the FMCG companies tell you that, but urban consumption is stalling. So one would, if you want to look at places where we can improve, it would be urban consumption not doing as well. Be that as it may, the overall growth for the full year, FY 24-25, it has come in at 6.5%. Our poll had said it would be only 6.3%. So that's a very good number. Even the third quarter number has been bumped up, revised higher. So all told, a 6.5% growth is very good at a time when globally there are a lot of headwinds gathering. Do you therefore expect the current year also to be very good? Most people are not that confident. In spite of the good fourth quarter, the fear is that there are global headwinds in the current year because of the tariff wars. And therefore, the average I'm getting is 6.3 for the current year. Let's see if we are in for a pleasant surprise for this year as well.
Well, the chief economic advisor to the government, Ananta Nageswaran, said that India's growth has held steady despite global turbulence. He maintained that GDP growth forecast of 6.3 to 6.8% for the current fiscal.
Our economy is doing quite well. And if we continue with the efforts to bring in more foreign direct investment and the private sector, if it continues its increase in capital investment, which we saw in 24-25, and urban consumption picks up on the back of, let's say, better capital formation, hiring and compensation, then we can probably achieve a growth rate which is at the higher end of this range. If not, we will be closer to the lower end of the range of 6.3 to 6.8 that we have.
Now, India's fiscal deficit for FY25 largely met the government's revised target. As per data released by Comptroller General of Accounts, India's fiscal deficit stood over 15.77 lakh crore rupees, or 4.8% of India's GDP. Now, Bitcoin fell below $106,000 mark, extending a recent decline from record highs. This as heightened uncertainty over US President Donald Trump's trade tariffs spurred sustained profit-taking in crypto. The currency's total market capitalization declined 2.12%. Meanwhile, the US market regulator has formally dropped its lawsuit against crypto exchange Binance and its founder for going ahead with that exchange. Now, the SEC and Binance jointly moved to dismiss the case, arguing that the case was already on hold while the SEC's crypto task force worked on regulations. The dismissal by the SEC comes 2 days after the agency accused Binance of illegally serving the United States users and misusing customer funds. Now, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell met President Trump in the White House to discuss economic growth, inflation, and employment. In its release, the Fed said that Powell did not discuss his expectations for monetary policy. However, he reiterated that the path of policy will depend entirely on incoming economic information. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that President Trump believed that Fed chair is making a mistake by not lowering interest rates.
President and I both saw the statement that the Fed put out after the meeting. That statement is correct. However, the president did say that he believes the Fed chair is making a mistake by not lowering interest rates, which is putting us at an economic disadvantage to China and other countries. And the president's been very vocal about that, both publicly and now I can reveal privately as well.
Well, back home in what comes as a major win for L&T, the Maharashtra government and MMRDA have decided to scrap the 14,000 crore rupee tender for 2 key road projects. That's Mumbai's elevated road project and the road tunnel project. The decision to scrap the projects comes after the apex court expressed shock at disqualification of L&T from the bidding process. L&T had challenged its ouster in the Bombay High Court and then in the Supreme Court. L&T had also flagged how Hyderabad-based Megha Engineering had been selected in the reverse bidding process, despite L&T's bid being lower by as much as 3,100 crore rupees. The Supreme Court had questioned the Maharashtra government's decision, especially on the difference of 3,100 crore rupees in the bid amount. The apex court also questioned how L&T, which is synonymous with Delhi's Central Vista project, was found to be unfit. The court also questioned the credentials of other bidders by citing the Uttarakhand tunnel collapse. On hearing the Supreme Court's concern, the MMRDA has now scrapped this entire tender process. The decision on the future of these 2 projects will now be taken by the Maharashtra government. Now, multinational companies are under the GST scanner. Sources tell CNBC TV18 that global capability centers and Indian subsidiaries of MNCs are facing inquiries of exports of services. Timsy Jaipuria is here joining us now with more details. Timsy.
Well, that's right. Sources have told CNBC TV18 that global capability centers, or GCCs, and Indian subsidiaries of MNCs are currently under GST scanner. Several companies across business hubs like Haryana, Bengaluru, Maharashtra are currently facing inquiries from GST authorities on export of services, challenging the export status of these services. CNBC TV18 has learned that summons and notices have been sent to firms that are offering back-end technology, education content development, marketing, design and R&D services to overseas clients. GST authorities at state and centre, along with DG GST Intelligence, are conducting this action, where they have sought detailed information on business models, client contracts and invoicing structures to determine whether these services are being provided as on own account or merely a facilitation that they provide. Meanwhile, industry claims that they are getting summons and notices for work done for foreign parent companies, and the government's interpretation of treating them as intermediary is incorrect. They also claim that companies are not arranging or facilitating supplies between 2 parties or 2 separate entities, but are providing services on their own account to foreign clients as exports. It is important to note that India is home to over 1,700 GCCs employing 1.9 million professionals and is expected to expand to around 2,400 GCCs employing over 2.8 million people by 2030. India is trying to generate GCCs as the new upcoming sector, where it has generated $64.6 billion worth of revenue in 2024 and is projected to expand this to $105 billion by 2030. Now, to be seen is whether government steps in to get some clarity from the GST Council on this to iron out the issue between the authorities and these companies. Back to you.
Right, Timsy, thanks so much for that. Now, in a major relief for US-based Amazon Web Services, the Delhi High Court has held that payments by Indian companies to AWS for the use of its cloud services cannot be taxed as royalty. The High Court has dismissed an appeal by the tax department. The taxman was looking to add 1,250 crore rupees to AWS's taxable income by citing payments made by Indian companies to AWS for cloud services. The tax department had argued that these payments to AWS are royalty and should be taxed accordingly. This case sets an important precedent on taxability of payments made by Indian companies to US-based tech players like Amazon, Meta and Google. But this may not be the final word. The tax department is likely to appeal this Delhi High Court judgment in the Supreme Court. Now, after Delhi and Bombay High Courts, Turkey-based airport ground handling services firm Celebi has moved the Madras High Court to prevent the Airports Authority of India from appointing a new agency for operations at the Chennai airport. Celebi found itself in the crossfire after India-Turkey ties took a hit following Ankara's support to Pakistan post-Operation Sindoor. The Indian government then revoked Celebi's security clearance, which led to several airports terminating their contracts with Celebi. And Yoga Guru Ramdev's Patanjali Ayurved faces government scrutiny for possible governance lapses. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has issued notices seeking details of financial transactions. The probe will also scrutinize financial transactions at Patanjali Ayurved and are likely to take 3 months. The scrutiny is based on information from other probe agencies alleging corporate governance issues. Now, the CBI has arrested a deputy director at the Enforcement Directorate, Chintan Raghuvanshi, for allegedly soliciting a bribe. The CBI laid a trap after being approached by a businessman in Odisha who was summoned by the ED official and was allegedly asked to pay a bribe of 5 crore rupees. My colleague Dhananjay is joining us now with more details. Dhananjay.
The Central Bureau of Investigation has arrested a Deputy Director rank officer of the Enforcement Directorate in Odisha in connection with an alleged bribery case. The accused has been identified as Chintan Raghuvanshi, who was posted as the Deputy Director at the Bhubaneswar Zonal Office of the ED. Raghuvanshi, who is a 2013 batch of the Indian Revenue Service officer, was allegedly caught red-handed while accepting a bribe of Rs 20 lakh from a Bhubaneswar-based businessman named Ratikanta Raut. The CBI had laid a trap, after which the businessman approached the agency to complain about the ED officer soliciting bribes. According to the CBI FIR, the complainant said that he was summoned for questioning at the ED office in Bhubaneswar in March this year. ED officer Raghuvanshi approached him and asked him to meet his another known accomplice referred to as Bhakti. Both of them allegedly sought a 5 crore bribe in exchange for settling a case filed under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Investigations revealed that the bribe demand was later negotiated and settled for Rs 2 crore. In this complaint to the CBI on May 28th, the businessman alleged that Chintan Raghuvanshi asked for a bribe to settle the case against him, but he does not have the means to pay that amount. CBI laid a trap and detained Raghuvanshi while he was allegedly accepting initial tranche of the bribe worth Rs 20 lakhs. The Enforcement Directorate has registered a case against Odisha businessman in 2020 for an alleged money laundering case. ED officers allegedly promised to close the case against him if he paid the bribe to him.
And coming up on India Business Hour, a 13-year-old Indian origin teenager from Texas, Faizan Zaki, wins the Spelling Bee contest, and it was a French-derived word that saw him emerge as the winner after narrowly missing out last year. That and much more on the other side. And you can also catch all CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Jio Hotstar. Now, shares of gold financiers surged in trade after the Financial Ministry has submitted suggestions to the Reserve Bank of India on its draft directions for lending against gold collateral. Government wants the RBI to spare small borrowers from stricter gold loan rules. The centre has also proposed an exemption for loans below 2 lakh rupees and wants the new rules to be deferred till January of next year. Well, on to a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. The centre has allocated over 3,400 crore rupees under the PM e-Drive scheme. The government will allocate 11,000 electric buses to 5 cities under this scheme. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, Heavy Industries Ministry H.T. Kumaraswamy has said that the allocation meets 100% of the requests from Ahmedabad and Surat, 64% from Karnataka and 71% from Telangana. Take a look.
More than 14,000 buses we are going to distribute now. In first phase, we requested 9 cities. That is from Maharashtra, then West Bengal, Chennai, Ahmedabad, Surat, then Pune, Maharashtra, then that Karnataka and Telangana. Out of 9 cities, 5 city government machinery from Transport Ministry, they have approached us.
And Indigo CEO Peter Elbers has said that the budget airline model is not dead in India. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, Elbers said that low cost does not mean low proposition. He added that Indigo is following the law on flights to Turkey and wet leasing planes from Turkish Airlines and promised changes to the network if government takes any decision.
Well, I think there's 2 different elements. One is our flights operating into Turkey, connecting Indian customers to the rest of the world. And that operates within the boundaries and the framework of the air service agreement and is governed by the 2 countries. And Indigo is always compliant with whatever happens in terms of government regulations and framework. And if that were to change, we will adjust our flights and schedules accordingly. We have the 787s. The first one is in operation. More are coming by the end of this year. And those we're using for direct flights into Europe, contrary to the flight to Istanbul and then connecting to parts of Europe. So, of course, we keep a close eye on what's happening. We keep a close line with the government in making sure that we continue to be compliant.
Very recently, the CEO of a leading American airline said that the budget airline model is dead. There are no budget airfares. What is your view on that?
Countries and markets develop at different stages. The domestic US aviation market cannot be compared to the domestic Indian aviation market. First of all, I would say India is probably the most competitive market in the world. And we still have millions and millions and millions of travelers who travel by train today and want to go by plane. And if you go from the northeast to the southeast of the country, which takes 2 days by train, and now we connect directly from Guwahati to via Delhi to Chennai, I mean, that demand is still there. So cost leadership for us is important in order to make sure that we continue to offer affordable fares. But with that, we build on that with the aspirational travel.
Well, that was, of course, Peter Elbers giving more clarity, giving more colour with respect to the operation of Indigo Airlines. Another key aspect, of course, being how they will be managing situations with respect to the current law of the land when it comes to wet leasing planes from Turkish origins. Let's move ahead now with some international news. Israeli forces have issued forced displacement orders for 5 more areas in North Gaza. This comes as it continues to strip the population into smaller areas of the enclave. Meanwhile, Hamas is currently reviewing the new ceasefire proposal. The United States, which Israel has already signed off on. However, Hamas has said that the ceasefire plan does not meet demands to end war in Gaza. The draft reportedly includes release of 28 Israeli hostages in the first week, a 60-day ceasefire, and aid for Gaza. Now, US President Donald Trump has announced a joint press conference with Elon Musk on tech billionaire's last day as a special government employee. In a post on Truth Social, Trump praised Musk, insisting that he will continue to help the United States government. The press conference will take place at the White House Oval Office. Musk's resignation comes at the end of a 130-day tenure as a special government employee. Germany is considering a 10% tax on global tech giants like Meta and Google. Germany's new culture minister, Wolfram Wiemer, said that government was drafting a proposal and was looking to speak to the platforms he accused of evading taxes. He added that Germany considers a tax rate of 10% to be moderate. This move will likely increase trade tensions with the Trump administration. Now, CNBC TV 18 Prime's new show Global Lens is in Singapore this week. Parikshit Luthra has been talking to the big newsmakers on ways to strengthen the ties between both the countries. Take a look.
Over the last 25 years, $160 billion has come from Singapore investors into the India market. Clearly, both countries are looking to elevate the partnership with a comprehensive and strategic roadmap. I caught up with Shilpak Ambule, India's High Commissioner to Singapore, to know more about the India-Singapore opportunity. Listen in.
The discussions on the air services agreement we are trying to schedule a meeting very soon and see where it goes. Second is this whole MRO space. Both SIA Engineering and ST Engineering, two big companies of Singapore, are well known for their MRO activities, and they are actively looking at going into India. SIA Engineering, in fact, along with Air India, has one unit in Bangalore, and they are looking at expanding.
We also visited the headquarters of Capital Land in Singapore. Now, Capital Land is one of the most diversified and one of the biggest real estate investors and developers here in Asia.
We currently have about 8 billion of funds under management, again, slowly, painstakingly built up over 30 years. The ambition, as I mentioned, is to more than double that in the next 3 to 5 years. So by 2030, we would like to double that to more than 15 billion in funds under management, which gives you a sense of our optimism, but also the confidence that we have that the Indian market is ready for such investment.
And before we wrap, Indian origin teen Faizan Zaki has been crowned the spelling bee champion. The 13-year-old from Texas was the runner-up last year after losing in the tiebreaker round. This year, he clinched the title and took home $52,500 prize. Here's the French-derived word that won him the competition. We leave you with Faizan Zaki's winning moment. Many thanks for watching.
Éclaircissement. Éclaircissement. E-C-L-A-I-R-C-I-S-S-E-M-E-N-T. Éclaircissement. That is correct.
Congratulations, Faizan Zaki. You are the 2025 Scripps National Spelling Bee Champion.
Somebody peel him off the floor.